Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to do a deep dive into recent changes in Canadian immigration policies.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, especially for tourists and international students.
Right.
We've got some news articles that detail these changes.
Okay.
So let's just jump right in.
Sounds good.
So first up, this is a big change for those of you who frequently travel to Canada.
Okay.
You know how there were those automatic 10-year multiple entry tourist visas?
Right.
Well, those aren't a guarantee anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So what's going on?
Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada.
exactly.
Yeah.
They've shifted to like a more individualized approach.
Okay.
So officers now have the discretion to grant like shorter single entry visas. And it's all based on each applicant's circumstances.
So they're really looking at each person individually now.
Yeah, like imagine you're a consultant who travels to Canada like every month for work.
Okay. Yeah.
Under the old system, you would just have that 10-year visa.
Right.
But now you might have to apply more often.
Oh, wow.
You might face shorter stays.
And more paperwork, probably.
Yeah, and uncertainty.
So it sounds like it could really disrupt people's routines and travel plans.
Oh, absolutely. And IRCC says that this change is aimed at managing temporary immigration levels,
Okay.
addressing housing shortages, and controlling living costs.
So basically trying to manage the flow of people coming into the country?
Exactly. But here's the thing.
What's that?
The application fee is still $100 Canadian.
Regardless of whether you get a single or multiple entry visa?
Yeah, so more frequent applications could mean more money.
Oh, wow. So that adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so now that we've looked at how these changes affect tourists,
Right.
let's look at international students.
Yeah, because I know they're going through some big changes as well.
Yeah, they're going through some huge changes. Do you remember the Student Direct Stream?
The SDS.
Yeah, and the Nigeria Student Express.
Yeah.
These programs streamline study permit applications.
For students from certain countries, right?
Exactly, and it made the whole process faster and less complicated.
Yeah, the SDS especially was a really good option for students.
It was like a fast track.
Right.
But
Well,
both programs have been phased out.
oh, wow. So what happens now?
So now prospective students are directed to the regular study permit stream,
Okay.
which could be longer and more competitive.
I see.
And there's another important thing,
What's that?
the guaranteed investment certificate.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the regular study permit stream now requires proof of financial support.
So they need to show that they have access to enough funds.
Yeah, through this guaranteed investment certificate.
Got it.
It basically means proving that you have access to at least $10,000 Canadian.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of money,
That could be a problem for a lot of students.
especially from developing countries.
Yeah. And Canada says it still welcomes international students,
Right.
but they're aiming for a more equitable application process.
What do they mean by equitable?
Well, they want to make sure students from all countries go through a similar application process.
So no more advantages or disadvantages based on nationality.
Exact.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in practice.
Right. So for anyone dreaming of studying in Canada, be aware of these changes and prepare accordingly.
Good advice.
Yeah, so
So
let's talk about how all of this fits into the bigger picture of Canadian immigration.
Okay, let's do it. It's important to understand that these policy shifts are part of a broader trend in Canadian immigration.
Oh, so it's not just temporary visas being affected.
No, it's much bigger than that.
Okay.
Remember those targets Canada set to welcome like 500,000 new permanent residents each year?
Yeah.
Well, they've significantly revised those numbers.
Oh, wow. So what are they looking at now?
The new targets aim for a range of 365,000 to 395,000 new permanent residents each year.
Okay, so lower.
Yes, and that's not all. There are also new restrictions on temporary foreign workers,
Oh, really?
specifically those in lower wage positions.
I see.
So businesses now face limitations on the percentage of foreign workers they can employ.
Okay.
They're looking at reductions between 10% and 20%.
It really sounds like they're trying to control immigration.
Yeah, they're taking a much more controlled approach across the board. And here's another development that kind of reinforces that.
What's that?
Canada recently reinstated visa requirements for Mexican citizens.
Oh, wow. Why did they do that?
It was prompted by a surge in asylum claims and unauthorized border crossings.
So it all comes back to control.
Exactly. Controlling immigration seems to be a central theme in all these changes.
Yeah, but what does this mean for Canada's reputation, as a welcoming and diverse nation?
That's a great question.
Right.
It raises some important concerns about potential economic and social impacts.
Like what kind of impacts?
Well, for example, will limiting the number of foreign workers hurt industries that rely on them?
That's a good point.
And how will these changes affect Canada's global image, its relationships with other countries.
Yeah, definitely things to think about.
Absolutely.
So with all these broader changes in mind, how do they directly affect you, the listener?
Right. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
Well, if you're planning a trip to Canada, don't assume you'll automatically get that 10-year multiple entry visa.
Good advice.
Be prepared for the possibility of a shorter visa and factor that into your travel plans and budget.
Okay, good point. And for our listeners who are aspiring international students,
Yes,
the journey to studying in Canada is definitely becoming more challenging.
for sure.
The end of those streamlined programs like the SDS,
Right.
it means you have to go through that regular study permit stream.
Which can be a lot more complex.
Yeah, and time-consuming.
Don't forget about that guaranteed investment certificate either.
Oh, right, yeah.
You need to prove you have access to a significant amount of funds.
So make sure your finances are in order and be prepared for a more rigorous application process.
Definitely.
So knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely, especially when it comes to navigating these constantly changing immigration policies.
Yeah, you need to stay informed and be adaptable.
Exactly. Keep up with the latest policies, do your research, and be prepared to adjust your plans as needed.
And that's why resources like this deep dive are so valuable.
Couldn't agree more.
We're trying to help you make sense of this complex information and make informed decisions,
Exactly.
whether it's about traveling, studying abroad, or just understanding what's shaping our world.
It's all about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture.
So before we wrap up,
Yeah.
let's zoom out and consider the bigger implications.
Okay.
So we've discussed the impacts on individuals, tourists, students, workers.
Right.
But how might these policy shifts reshape the dynamics of global mobility and Canada's role on the world stage?
That's a really insightful question.
Thanks.
I think we're witnessing a global trend towards more controlled immigration.
That's interesting.
It raises concerns about potential impacts on talent flows, cultural exchange, even international relations.
Right.
Will these policies hinder the free movement of people and ideas across borders?
Yeah, it feels like we're at a crossroads.
The decisions being made today will definitely have lasting consequences.
So to our listeners,
Yes.
we encourage you to keep exploring this topic.
Don't just take our word for it.
Yeah, do your own research, stay informed, and join the conversation.
Exactly.
The world is changing rapidly, and understanding these shifts is vital for navigating the future.
Well said.
Okay,
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
we'll be back to unpack the next fascinating topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious. Wow. So we've examined those individual impacts, and then we zoomed out to see the big picture.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about those potential ripple effects, huh?
It really does. These deep dives
Yeah.
help us connect all those different pieces of information.
Right, and then you can see everything more clearly.
Yeah. And in this case, we're seeing a world that's constantly changing.
It is. It really is. And it demands, adaptability
Oh, for sure.
and a willingness to kind of embrace all these changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this exploration of Canada's immigration changes,
Yeah.
what's the one big takeaway for our listeners?
I'd say stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Because
Because these changes in Canadian immigration,
Right.
it's just one example of how fast the world is transforming.
Yeah.
So, don't just accept things at face value.
No.
Dig deeper.
Yeah.
Question your assumptions.
Yeah, get different perspectives.
Exactly, because understanding these complex issues,
It's important.
it's going to shape the future.
That's a great way to put it. And this isn't the end of the conversation.
Now it's just the beginning.
Yeah. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Couldn't agree more.
We'll be back to unpack the next fascinating topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious.